So first off, who am I? Why am I here? I'm an accountant, but it's an unusual path. I started at Ernst & Young, where I was a manager of accounting system design, building big global international systems. And then at age 29, I got to be the chief financial officer of a nonprofit called Amnesty International USA. And that was right after Bruce Springsteen and U2 and Sting did a worldwide Human Rights Now tour, and Amnesty grew from 6 million to 18 million. And I had to figure out how to scale this infrastructure, but then I became the director of development. And I was responsible not just for counting the beans, but raising more beans. So we went from 16 to $21 million in my 7 years running fundraising at Amnesty. And I learned how to build a diversified program. And we're going to talk a little bit about how you do that today. But I'm a CPA and I loved accounting. So when the internet started in 1995, I started the first outsourced accounting over the web. Sold that to a company here in Kingwood, Texas, where I live, called Insperity. And then we spun off the accounting arm, outsourced accounting over the web, to a company called Growth Force, which I sold a year ago. And now I've invested my energy in paying back and sharing how in the fundraising accounting community, a new nonprofit community, how do you use your numbers to tell your donor story, to treat donors like investors? And that's what we're going to talk about today. And that's critical because it's why you're here. This is the most competitive fundraising environment in my lifetime. Organizations across the board are struggling. And that's been resulting in, and it's going to get worse. You're seeing the writing on the wall as the government cuts cascade down to the states and the states to the community. Every one of us are feeling that pressure. The programs are at risk and the future is uncertain. And it's not just my gut instinct saying this. Forbes Mazars, one of the top 10 CPA firms in the United States, just finished their 2025 annual report on the state of the nonprofit sector. And what they found was that 3 out of 4 nonprofits have cut staff or eliminated their programs. 77% of the nonprofits that they surveyed have had an increase in demand. So while there's more pressure to provide services because of the demand from the community, almost half don't have the money to deliver to all the people they want to deliver to now. So what do we do about that? Well, the first step is to figure out, where does money come from? And Giving USA does an annual report. They just came out with 2025 about 5 months ago. And what they found was 74% of all giving comes from people, either people when they're alive, through donations, or through their estates, through planned giving. And they also said that the only organizations that are raising more money right now are those that are showing their donors the tangible results of their gift, because emotional appeals no longer work. There's too much competition, and investors are trying to make data-driven decisions about where do we invest our money based on the impact that they make. And so today is about using AI to switch from talking about what donors have historically paid for, the outputs, the work that you do. So for example, in this homeless organization, they had 694 hours of case management. They had 2,018 volunteers hours, and they served over almost 9,000 meals. But that message alone is no longer enough in order to raise more money. You have to treat your donors like investors. You have to show them the outcomes that happened as a result of their investment. What happened with that case management? Well, it led to 100% graduation, and the graduates got employment, and they earned $23 an hour, and they saved $5,000 upon graduation. So they had a solid base. And this homeless organization had 100% success in reuniting families that were broken apart. That's the change that we're talking about, Bryan. The difference right now, and what today's session is about, is how do you use AI to treat donors like investors?
So as I mentioned before, Stephen's done something a little different than we typically do, and I appreciate it, having some stopping points for some questions that have come in. We've got a couple. One person said you're obviously looking at a lot of nonprofit numbers. Where is most of the money and donations coming from?
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing this for 35 years since I left Amnesty and started doing outsourced accounting for nonprofits. And what's fascinating to me is how few organizations get 74% of their revenue from individuals. Most of the organizations that I see have concentrated their donations from 2 or 3 major sources. Foundations are the easy one, right? That's the low-hanging fruit. There's a process you can follow. You're going to get a return on the investment from a grant writer. There's a schedule. You know what the guidelines are. So foundations are often the baseline for getting started. And a significant number of nonprofits get government funds. And that's the part that's the scariest, because that is starting to dry up. You're already seeing it in the homeless organizations I mentioned here, as well as in special needs. State of Texas is 49th out of 50th in providing IDD. And unless that's part of the momentum of whatever's happening in politics at the time, you can't always depend on those government funding to be there. So that's the challenge, is how very few, Bryan, get 74% of their revenue from donors.
Interesting. Yeah, we work with quite a few nonprofits, and a lot of those that have relied on government funding are going through a tough time right now. So I'm looking forward to the rest of the discussion and how they can better leverage AI to increase those individual dollars.
Yeah, so let's get into it. So how do you compete for donor dollars, and how do you use AI to make that? So first thing I think it's important to understand is donors are looking for a return on their investment. In fact, I suggest in our workshops, I suggest that you don't even call your donors donors. Words have power. Change to calling them investors. And that will get your board, your development team, your staff to be thinking about them as investors. And an investor is looking for a return on investment, right? That's what ROI stands for. And ROI, the math is very simple. It's the value that you create, the economic impact because you exist, divided by the cost that you invested in that program. So for example, if you have a $100,000 impact on your community and it cost you $25,000 to run that program, that's a 4 times ROI. You got 100, you spent it 25, you got a 4x return. But in ROI, you want to think about ROI as a percentage. And so you multiply that 4 times 100, and that gets you to 400%. And so that's significant, because once you start talking about your programs as an ROI, it makes it easy for you to have one story to tell everyone. It doesn't matter who you're asking for money. If you are thinking about ROI and saying, we provide a 400% ROI, now you've got something that anyone can do. This is Tricia Bledsoe. She is the executive director of Mission Northeast. And I love how she explained how talking about ROI allowed her to have a number that moves people to act.
This translates from the businessman to the pastor. And in my world, I need both of those people to have information that makes sense to them. And so obviously he's concerned about the spiritual health of people and things like that. But I mean, logical, clear, understandable language is, I can take it to a business board meeting where they don't care if we have pastors or not. And then I can take it to a church where they do care, but they also appreciate this sort of great information. It makes sense to them. Now we're being, on one world, I'm being a great steward of this, that's their language. And the other ones, I'm giving you a great ROI. And so, but it's all the same information.
And that's the key. You want to get everyone in your organization having one story for everyone who invests in your organization. So how do you do that? Well, you have to learn how to tell your story with numbers. And there's three parts to those numbers. There's three steps to getting there. Number one, figuring out what are your right numbers. Everyone's different. Every mission is different. And we're going to work backwards from the mission to figure out what are your right numbers. Number two is you have to separate the cost of your program work from your overhead. That's what allows you to be able to calculate the fully loaded cost of your programs. And by separating out the program cost from your overhead, it also makes it really easy to allocate your overhead back to your programs. So you get fully loaded cost per programs. And then step three, take that fully loaded cost per program and then measure the impact that you've got versus your cost so you can see what your return on investment. We're going to talk about number one and number three today. No accounting in today's session, unfortunately, but I'm happy to help you take care of all that as part of the community. So, all right, so what are the right numbers? If you're trying to sit in there trying to figure out what are our right numbers, the first step is to say, okay, what do you put on the Donate Now page of your website? To me, that's the most important place where you really need good numbers. And I'm going to show you how the Fort Bend Women's Center did that using AI to create the 3 investor numbers that every organization needs. You need to be able to talk about your pain. Why should somebody invest in your mission right now? That's first. The second is showing the investors the tangible results of their gift. Giving USA said it. That's the only way that you can differentiate yourself from everyone else. And then finally, once you take those tangible results, what was the impact of your programs? What happened in your community because your mission exists? So let me show you how we did that. This is all part of the fundraising accounting community. Fort Bend is a member, and I love their story. At the end of the year, they've been around 52 years. So this is, many people know who Fort Bend is here in the Houston area. They're a large 8-figure, over $10 million shelter. And on their website, they put 3 sets of investor numbers, and they had the best year end ever. In fact, on their online program, they had 200 donors before they started this program. And because of this, what you're about to see, they doubled the number of donors. They exceeded their goals on their online program because they were able to show what is the pain statements. Why should someone invest right now? And this is the pain that we see across everybody. They lost $800,000 in funding. The SNAP budgets, when DOGE did their cuts, that cascaded down to the state cascaded down to the city, and that caused a big cut in their funding from the government. And 1,600 people were not served because there was no room in the shelter, in the center. And they had a 50% increase in demand last year. That meant 3,400 people were served, but they really needed to serve 5,000 people. So that's the first reason. Why should somebody invest? Because survivors of domestic abuse and sexual assault are at risk. Then they show them the tangible results of their gift. And this is what goes right below the pain statements on your Donate Now page. You want to take the programs that have the greatest impact on your mission, the ones that further your mission the most, and break them down into discrete, tangible results. $500 provides 2 weeks of support for a survivor, and that includes safety planning and counseling and legal help. That's critical for them to break the cycle of homelessness and abuse, because that's their mission. Their mission is not to house the homeless. Their mission is to help all survivors of domestic violence break the cycle. What I love is this middle one here, $125, and you can do that a month easily or one time, provides a safe and secure night at the shelter for a mother and a child. Everybody says donors don't want to pay for salaries. They don't want to pay for overhead. Well, what they will pay for is outcomes. And $125 is a discrete amount that's paying for a safe and secure night at the shelter. So you describe this in tangible results that someone will understand. And what you'll notice here is, I love how they started with the largest amount, $500 on the Donate Now page is on the left-hand side. So many people start with the low dollar amount. You want to reverse that. And then you drop each one of these buckets by a half. 500 goes to 250, 250 to 125, 125 round it down to 50, and then a custom amount. And you could start it wherever you want. You could do 1,000, 500, 250. But the idea here is that you want to calculate what does it cost for the most important programs that further your mission the most. And then we built an AI tool called Roybot. And what Roybot does is it allows the members of the community to be able to enter their outputs, the work that they do, and the desired outcomes, and then it calculates the social outcomes that happen, the social impact as a result of each program, and it calculates the economic impact, the return on investment. It allows you to, it creates a table, and I'm going to show you how you can do this with your own ChatGPT. You don't have to use Roybot. It's not rocket science. But what it does is it creates a table that says, here are our programs. Here are the outcomes that happen as a result of each of our programs. And then here's the total return on investment. In fact, it adds it all up. You can see here, this was on their website, which is why they had such a great year-end appeal. Every dollar donated, invested in the Fort Bend Women's Center created $4.20 in social and economic impact on our community. And this is the 2025 year end. So they did 2024 community impact was 9.2 million. I can assure you, as soon as January was closed, they updated it and they got their annual report out already because they had this data to show an investment in the Fort Bend Women's Center has a 420% ROI. That separates them from all the other organizations out there competing for donors, because your donors are being asked for investment by a lot of organizations that are very, very valuable, very meaningful, close to their heart. And if you have to make a decision among who you're going to invest in, this is the way you do that. Bryan?
It's fascinating already diving into this, and I know you've got a lot more content around it. One of the things that folks are skeptical about AI, and I'm adding on to a question that we got in, is it's great. It gives you a lot of information, but how do you validate that the numbers and the information it's given you is accurate?
Oh, it's a great question. So we're going to talk about constraints later on as we show you how to build the prompt to be able to generate your own ROI statements. But the critical point here is that when you create your outputs, make sure that you're prompting the AI tool of your choice to, number one, you force it to show the math. Number one, make sure that you say, don't make anything up. No hallucinations.
Yeah.
Now, you can't rely on that. If you run it through twice, don't make anything up. That increases the likelihood that nothing gets made up exponentially. But you have it show you the math. Make the output provide a link to every source of data. And then what I say to every executive director that we work with, you are responsible for the integrity of that data. Make sure that your director of development or someone on her team are checking the math and recreating it, because There's nothing worse than going out there and saying, hey, we generated $4.20 in economic impact in Houston in the Fort Bend County community, and then having somebody come back and say, oh, wait, that's BS. I call bluff. And so the team went through, and on each item, they took the conservative, that also suggests that you ask to provide a range. They took the conservative end of the range and they double checked the math. Does that answer your question, Bryan?
It does. I had a conversation with a CFO just last week, and she was leveraging AI for a lot of board reports and those type of things. And she mentioned this, and she was like, yeah, I treat it just like I would a brand new employee. If I hired a brand new employee, yes, I want to hope that their numbers are accurate, but I'm going to double check their math, give everything a sanity check just to make sure, because at the end of the day, presenting the right numbers is her responsibility. And I think looking at AI tools the same way, it's a tool that's in front of you, but at the end of the day, you've got to spend the time to double check it, give it a sanity check, make sure that what you're getting is accurate.
I love that metaphor of treating it like a brand new employee. I never heard that. What I have heard is treat it like an intern.
Yeah.
And I don't like it so much because this is so much more powerful than any intern could ever do. But as a new employee, I think that's a really good example. So yeah, I think that's really helpful. Trust but verify, right? That's the key.
Absolutely. All right, I'm gonna bounce off, but I'll come back when we got more questions.
Yeah, cool. So I like to tell stories about how our members are using it. You saw the end result of the Fort Bend Women's Center, but I want to walk you through how the Catalyst for Educational Change used AI to measure impact. And they used our Roybot, which is our AI tool that you get inside the fundraising accounting community. But you know, the truth is the secret's in the prompt. And so we've created a prompt builder that we give everyone in our community to be able to help them be able to get the outputs they want. But the concepts are pretty straightforward. We built this whole program based on the prompt engineering that I learned from Devin Lyles, who is a speaker at Vistage. I've been a Vistage speaker myself for 10 years, but Devin came to my group with Robin Stanilan, and he taught us the concept of RTCC. And I've been living by this for the last year ever since. The first step in building a good prompt is you have to define your role. What is the role you're playing right now? I'm the executive director of the fundraising accounting community, but sometimes when I'm in AI, I'm playing the role of a grant writer. And so you look at the role that you're playing, not the title, but who am I when I'm doing this? The T is for the task. Like Bryan said, this is, a brand new employee or an intern. You give it one task at a time. Then you provide some context. What is the background information? What does it need to know about the task? And list the things that you want it to care about so that it gives that context to give you a deeper answer. And then finally, and the most important, what are the constraints? Don't make things up. Tell AI what not to do. This is as important as the actual task itself. And what you're going to find, this is an important tip here, if you get an output that is wrong, and you're like, okay, this is not good, don't tweak the prompt. Start over. Because the order that you put the information in matters. And if you've got something that's wrong, it means that the key information you want was too low, and you need to reorder that. Let me just show you how this works. So the first step is role. Role basically means who are you right now? And in this case, we're going to tell you the story of Elisa Bronte. She is the managing director of the Catalyst for Educational Change. And she's trying to, so that's her role, right? She's the managing director, and that's the role she's playing. She's the task, which is, what do you need help with? She asked AI to measure the ripple effect of improving education, because their mission is to help improve the way teachers build students to think. It's a great mission, and it's really working. And I know it's working because you're going to see the impact that they have based on helping measure the ripple effect of improving education. Now, that's a big ask. And I said to Elisa, why did you start there? She said, you know what, Steve? I didn't know where to begin. This is hard. We've never been able to measure the ripple effect. And so I wanted to turn it around and get the AI helping me figure out what I don't know. And so that's the biggest lesson of today. If you're not already doing this, the way to unleash the power is to start by saying, okay, help me figure out what I don't know. Then provide some context. She specifically was looking for the work they did in the Chicago school systems. They're based in Columbus, Ohio. And she loaded in 4 years of data to calculate that ripple effect. How many people benefit from training teachers or changing their systems? So that's the context. Specifically, what do you want to get done? And then you also want to provide some context of one of the things I learned as running fundraising for Amnesty International was nonprofits whose stories are in the news raise more money. Whenever there was a human rights outbreak and Amnesty International got some headlines, we had a spike in giving. Why? Because it's third-party validation that your mission is meaningful. So if you're in the news, reference that. If you invest in our programs, this will change whatever's in the news. The impact of not having enough teachers in the United States. So context is important. And then finally, you want constraints. What do you not want AI to consider? Like Bryan, you were asking, somebody asked, how do you know that you didn't make it up? Well, first off, tell them don't make it up. So then say, you better provide a source of any number and show me the math. We're going back to sixth grade algebra. Show me your work so that you can prove it. You can also provide constraints of anything else you want. Like, for example, in Fort Bend, they just wanted regional information. You could also say, only give me government statistics or things that have been certified by a university. Whatever you want, make sure that you are asking it what not to consider. And again, this is as important as the prompt. So you want to make sure you think that through. And then just let AI figure out the answers. If the question was, how do you measure the ripple effect of improvement in education? Well, AI came up with a formula. Oh my God, my mind was blown. When I talked to them, they're like, first off, I said, so, hey, how's it going? Are you using Roybot? Is it useful? She goes, oh, we use it every day. I said, wait a second, you're using Roybot every day? I designed this to help you write grants. I designed this to help you create impact statements for your major donors and your individuals, because 74% of the money comes from people. We designed this for fundraising. You're not fundraising every day. She said, no, we use this for our program work. We use this for every time we've got to provide a report to a school, to a teacher, to a parent. We show them the impact. And this tool not only, that's what I love. Education's a hard one to measure. Homeless is easy. You stop homelessness in Houston, you save $23,500 of somebody on the social cost by preventing homelessness. But what about education or wheelchairs for warriors or special needs services? Well, AI can help you define the metrics that you should consider. This is the metrics for the Catalyst for Educational Change. They now had a list of potential metrics that they could choose from and then take what AI that the Roybot showed them, the AI ChatGPT showed them were potential metrics, pick and choose the ones that were the most meaningful, and then feed that back in. And once they did that, AI calculated the ripple effect, the multiplier effect. The first is teacher retention improvement was the single biggest cause and effect of increasing standardized test scores. They found that when teachers don't turn over, scores rise. Duh, that makes sense. But once you have evidential matter. You can see the data. Now you can say, okay, that's worth $25,000 per teacher retained. The Learning Policy Institute did the study to show what's the impact of lower teacher turnover. And when there's lower teacher turnover, students graduate at higher rates. That creates $9,200 per year in additional taxes paid per graduate. That's $170,000 of additional taxes paid when somebody graduates from a high school degree. I've always thought about, all right, if you graduate with a high school degree, you make more money. But what I never thought about is, how much do those people pay in additional taxes? The Bureau of Labor Statistics and the Alliance for Excellent Education calculated the impact of more graduates in the workforce, a stronger base, tax base, and more local spending. And it showed what happens with better student attendance. The CDC and the National Dropout Prevention Center showed the cost associated with lower juvenile justice and dropout rates. That's the impact. It's not just the outputs where we deliver these courses, and the impact is higher test scores, greater employment opportunity, lower social costs for people who didn't graduate. But my favorite part of all this is the Roybot and AI can write your impact statements. Both the social impact, stable supported schools mean more students are likely to graduate, find stable jobs, raise families, and reduce cycles of poverty. But then they also translate that into economic impact. Every graduate contributes $170,000 in lifetime contributions. And this is the story. This is the story you can tell everybody. Every dollar invested in the catalyst for educational change creates $5 in saved and avoided wasting education spending. And that doesn't even include the long-term community benefits. That's a 500% ROI. Now, that alone would have been great. But then Tiffany Layton, the impact manager for CEC, she needed help with updating the impact page on her website with their 2025 numbers. And I started this when I asked, I said, so Tiffany, how do you use Roybot? And she said, well, today, I use it every day. So this morning, I needed to update the impact pages. And the way she does that is she takes the Roybot information, she takes the outputs from Roy, and she loads it into Claude. Why? Because ChatGPT is great for plain language outcomes, but it's not great for design, for images, for creating something that will have a powerful impact. And so what CEC does, and they do this every day, they take the data that came out of the AI ChatGPT and they load it into Claude. This is for one grant that they got. They had to report back to the grantor. They had to report back to the school. And then investing in literacy across Chicago built lasting infrastructure that had they made an $80,000 investment, and the cohort that they invested in with their teachers generated up to $1.2 million in investment. And what I love is, not only did they get that math, but they're also used Claude to be able to turn that into deliverables that show the professionalism of the work that they have. Every dollar for this grant generated $945,000. Every dollar generated up to $15 in long-term value. Their impact compounds year over year without any more additional costs. Because once you understand their system, the catalyst for the educational change, now you are able to leverage that for as long as your teachers stay on the team. Does that make sense, Bryan?
It does. One of the questions that came in, that good information. So someone asked, how does your approach differ when you're working with a trade association versus a philanthropical organization? Trade groups with donor bases often engage donors in a very different way. What are your thoughts there?
So I love that question. I think the key here is to move from the outputs to the outcomes and the economic input of the outcome. So if you're a trade association, I was talking to a while back, I was talking to an organization in Seattle that helped with fisheries, and the organizations that helped manage all the fishing and if you can find out, Bryan, from that person which group it was or what industry, I might be able to add more specific. But what you want to be able to do is use the AI to calculate the ripple effect of the work that you do in supporting your members, so that you can then leverage the benefit that they get by being a member of your trade association. So for example, I'm a member of the Texas Society of CPAs Houston chapter.
And interesting you say that, because that is who this question is related to, the CPA Society.
Really? Oh, fantastic. Well, I don't have anything specifically prepared, but I can talk about my own experience. You know, and the Texas Society of CPAs is a member of the fundraising accounting community. Why? Because they want to learn how to use their numbers to raise more money, to attract more CPAs to be part of the state society. And so the idea here is that by providing the continuing professional education, by providing the training, by providing the networking, the relationships, the opportunities to help find staff in the, we have a shortage of accountants in the United States. There's not enough CPAs graduating to replace guys like me who sell their practice and retire and go do something other than accounting. And by calculating the impact that the trade association has on its members, then now you can not only go to your members and say, by joining this society, you get to benefit in these ways, and this is what this can mean to you. Just the networking alone and being able to find potential young CPAs is gold for most people who get involved. But also the education and the ability to provide additional services. We're talking about creating a fundraising accounting certification program. Well, that would allow CPAs who are serving nonprofits to help them not just count the beans and be in compliance and do the audit and the 990 tax return, but also help use the numbers to help the fundraisers raise more money, use the numbers to help the executive directors make data-driven decisions. And that provides a whole new revenue opportunity. So by feeding that into AI, it allows you to be able to quantify your impact for your members. And then you can show the value of the whole membership to potential investors in the trade association. Now you can go to a foundation and say, we'd like you to invest in this new program because we can measure the social and economic impact. Does that answer your question, Bryan?
I think so. I think that was good. I believe you're going to get to it in a little bit, but we've had a couple of people interested in Roybot specifically and how do they get access to it. I don't know if now's a good time to talk about it or if you want to punt that to later.
I'm going to come back to that later because I do have a slide at the end. And the short answer is you get it as part of being a member of the fundraising accounting community. And so we've designed this to be able to give all these tools, AI tools, KPI tools, calculators, trainings, online demand trainings for anybody who's a member, because this is a nonprofit. We're not trying to make money off of the AI. We're trying to help. Our mission is to change how nonprofits use their numbers to tell their donor story.
All right, I'll be back in a bit.
Cool. So I want to come back here and show you how AI actually did use Roybot to create their annual report, which was out faster this year than ever before, their annual impact statement. First off, you just load in the basic information, right? The name, address. You have to include the zip code because what it does, if you build your own, you'll want to do this. You put your zip code in so that you can measure the economic impact based on what it cost here. It costs $23,500 for someone who is homeless per person in Fort Bend. It costs $36,500 for the same thing in San Diego. We work with the Solutions for Change, the largest homeless organization in San Diego, and the cost structure is different. So you want to make sure that you're talking about your cost structure. But the secret here is the keywords. I mentioned that you have to put the most important things at the top of the prompt sheet. So this is the order that you want your prompt sheet to be entered. And you'll notice here, there's a lot of keywords. They did 3 versions of brainstorming with their leadership team and their fundraisers to figure out how many keywords apply to us. And why is that so important? Because the keywords tell ChatGPT, what should we be out there looking for? The more keywords you can enter, the greater the impact it's going to have. Now, Fort Bend Women's Center always talked about their outputs, just like every other organization does. They treated their contributors as donors, and they said, here's what you paid for. You paid for 422 survivors, for 9,700 crisis hotline calls, 23,000 meals. But investors are looking for outcomes. And so the next part of your prompt sheet is listing your programs in order of priority based on which ones further your mission the most. For them, the emergency shelter is number 1. And then you list the outputs. 414 clients were served in 2024. And then if you have an impact statement, add the impact statement. Domestic violence and sexual assault survivors escaped danger and homelessness. And you do that for all of your programs. They have 11 programs. So they just listed the program description, the outputs, and the impact statements. That's all you need to do. And then provide that context we talked about. What else do you want AI to know? What does it need to know? What are the things you care about for this purpose? If you're writing a grant, I talked to Henrietta yesterday at Fort Bend Women's Center. She's the grant writer. And she said, I really just want to be able to take it from a specific document, not look at all the data that's in AI. Okay, great. Then you can say, using this grant application, this 40-page government grant application, work backwards from there to provide X, Y, and Z for this specific grant. And then once you provide that context and any constraints that you already have, what Roybot does is it helps move from outputs to outcomes. And what I love is you want to ask the question, what changed because of those services? So in our back end, we've got this long prompt that we've built over the last year. And one of the key things you can put in your prompt is, what's changed because we exist? Survivors escape danger. Trauma systems and mental health stabilize. Families got housing security and food stability. Survivors got legal protection and financial independence. And what I love here is they didn't talk to CEC at all, but what they did was they found was that it says on the right-hand side, these outcomes don't end at crisis intervention. They ripple through family, schools, workplace, and the community. So again, use AI and ask it to help you show the ripple effect, because that's the big story. And they have a big story. 3.57 million. This is 2025's data now. Before I was showing you 2024, they updated it in January to get this impact statement out in late January because they had the data. 1.2 million in mental health care costs were provided at no cost. 2.7 in housing stability and 3.57 in avoided emergency shelter and crisis response costs. What's fascinating to me is every single organization that has worked with Roybot found something, an impact statement about their organization that they didn't know. Josh Brown, the executive director, told me, we've been here 52 years. Sorry, 52 years. And one of the things Roybot told us was the most dangerous visit a peace officer will ever make is to a scene of domestic violence. That's their most dangerous visit. And so what Josh was able to do is to go to the police chief in Houston and say, hey, I know you guys looked at us as, oh, I got to go back to the shelter. There's an issue there. Now we can go and say, no, It's not a pain in the butt that you got to do 3 hours of paperwork. It's an opportunity to help reduce the most dangerous visits you can. Every nonprofit has found something, an impact they didn't even know they had. And for the Fort Bend Women's Center, they took that information and they put it into this 2025 impact report that combined what happened, the output, 8,111 survivors in 2025, avoided 3.57 million in emergency and crisis related costs. That allows them to be able to tell a story that nobody else has. They had a 420% ROI. And if you're competing against the Fort Bend Women's Center for a donor contribution, and you can't show the social impact or the economic return on investment, that donor is going to more likely make a contribution to the Fort Bend Women's Center. That's what Giving USA says. So that's how you use AI in order to calculate your return on investment.
I have a question for me personally. Looking at the numbers you've shown, getting that information alone is very impressive using AI. But have you quantified or given any estimations on the amount of time savings that using AI has saved them versus if they were having to go pull all that information manually, even if they had the ability to pull it manually?
Yes, we have. In fact, Fort Bend Women's Center got a grant from the United Way to help improve their development operations. I know a lot of people in town got grants to help streamline and improve the capacity for development. And what we calculated was that this can eliminate 75% of the time. Now, that breaks out into two parts. Most of the time is savings in doing the math, gathering the data, being able to accumulate all the information manually takes, could be days. Eliminating all that is one big portion of it. But what the real value, first off, it will never do 100%. We don't even think it'll get above 75. Why? Because what we hear from all the grant officers is, I hate when somebody gives me an AI grant. And you can tell by, the sequence, this and this and this, the double dashes, the lines, the emoticons. There's a lot of tells that you want to get out of AI and just make it plain English. But the real value is in giving an opportunity to identify different ways to tell that investor story, ways that they didn't think about. And so, but we're estimating 70 to 75% of the labor gets eliminated. And I think that's why we're getting such strong support from the community, because nobody has enough time.
Yeah. What other items are you using Roybot for, or other AI types of tools for in the nonprofits you're working with?
We do a monthly workshop. It's not a webinar; it's an actual workshop. So people, we share. I shared these stories. This month was return on investment, and then we break out into breakout groups, and the members came back with all the stories about how they were using it. Some of the ones we talked about here with what CEC did is, creating landing pages, and with Fort Bend did, creating the impact statement. But you can also use this for your marketing in general. What's your messaging? You can use this for your donor letters, your impact statements. You can use this for your annual report. You can use this for your social media. The one organization is using this for their compliance officer. So they're in a highly regulated industry. Their compliance officer is using this to help them get through the audits. When the auditor comes in and says, I would like to see these 15 documents, by loading all the data in, you have the ability to go and say, okay, give me these 15 documents, and you can get it in 15 minutes instead of 5 hours.
Very good. But I think you've got a little bit more content. We've got about 5 minutes to get through. Just
Beautiful.
a reminder, if anyone's got questions, feel free to ask those.
Yeah, so basically, if you don't want to build your own Roybot, or if you just want to be part of a community where it's dedicated to helping each other treat donors like investors and make that shift, and diversify your whole fundraising program so you're not dependent on 2 or 3 sources, we've got this great member pricing and a 30-day free trial using the code Aldridge, which allows you to get access to the community and meet colleagues who are facing the exact same problems. All nonprofits compete for donors and for clients, but everything else is collaborative or an opportunity to be collaborative. So we've got 6 special needs organizations meeting together to talk about how do we raise awareness about the need for better funding in the IDD community. We are bringing homeless organizations to help talk about building a strategic plan for Northeast Houston, because we don't have overnight shelter anywhere in Houston. We've got monthly live workshops to keep you on that path to growth. We've got this learning library that we're building on-demand training videos where I'm sharing all this knowledge. And you get the Roybot Impact tool that shows that social and economic. You also have, when I sold Growth Force, I was able to keep the right to use the nonprofit key performance indicator dashboards that I created so that you can get data at your fingertips to show you the social and economic impact and figure out where do you invest your money. So it's $49. There's a barcode right there if you want to join us, and you get 30 days free, which means you get Roybot for the next 30 days. You get the workshops, you get the learning libraries, all for 30 days. And I give 100% money back guarantee to everybody. We're not doing this for the money. That's just a small cost to cover just the basic cost. But that's eligible for everybody in your organization, because I want to encourage teams to join. Your leadership team should be part of this, so that together you're following this journey that we've got. This session here was measuring your ROI. Next month, we're going to do how do you ask for money? So that the goal here is that if you're the executive director and your job is to raise money, but you've never been formally trained, I got to go to the Indiana School of Philanthropy. Well, we're going to teach you how to do that. And if you're a director of development and you've got a board member or a treasurer or a volunteer you want to bring with you on calls, you're going to be the one asking for money, but this is really good for members to be able to learn how to use your numbers to tell your story. So there you go. We're welcoming you in our community and love to have you.